Okay, let's get started and recognize that if there's a call, obviously engine company is going to respond, so just be prepared. But I want to thank Chief Thompson for being with me, Chief of our Fire and EMS, and also Veronica Pace, who is our esteemed Director of our award-winning Office on Aging, for both joining me today. And I want to welcome all of you to Engine Company 16, which all of us know is also called the Midnight Express. And Chief Thompson, thanks for hosting our briefing here so that we can talk about an important issue in our city, that being fire safety, in advance of what is traditionally considered the fire season. Now, an overwhelming number of fires occur in the home, we know that, and there are time-tested ways to prevent and survive a fire. It's not a question of luck, it's a question of planning and prevention. Every home should have at least one working smoke alarm. And this is an example of a smoking alarm here. It's inexpensive protection for you and your family. Traditionally, we remind people to change the batteries on their smoke alarms the same weekend that we turn back our clocks for daylight savings time. And this is a weekend now that we've changed this, right? This is a weekend of October 29th and 30th. So when you change your clock, go around your house and change the batteries on your smoke detectors. And all DC firehouses have smoke alarms and batteries available free of charge for our district citizens and residents. And we have some with us here today. And here are some additional tips. Never overload circuits or extension cords. When using appliances, follow the safety recommendations, directions of the manufacturer. If you're using portable heaters, remember to keep anything combustible at least 3 feet away from the heater. Also, keep fire in the fireplace. Use fire screens and have your chimney screened annually. I didn't think we had to tell people to keep fires in the fireplace, but I guess we do. So keep the fire in the fireplace. Okay. Consider purchasing a fire safety sprinkler for your home. When home fire sprinklers are used with working smoke alarms, your chances of surviving a fire are actually dramatically increased. So you should consider that, particularly if you're doing remodeling or into a new home situation. Practice an escape plan from every room in the house. Caution everyone to stay low to the floor when escaping from fire and never open doors that are hot. And I'm sure that your local fighting unit has tips on how you can advise your family on all those things. If you've got children, remember that children under 5 are naturally curious about fire and they play with matches and lighters. Take the mystery out of fire play by teaching your children that fire is a tool, not a toy. And that's a very, very important lesson I learned from my father when I was growing up. I had a friend, Paul Amato, who took me over to a field and actually lit the field on fire and then ran away. And I was standing there as the fire department was coming up. I was about 6 years old. Felt like a complete idiot. So you learn at an early age that fire is not a toy. It is a tool, and you need to learn that lesson quickly so that if someone invites your child to go out to a field to set a fire, they know better. Finally, every year, more than 1,200 senior citizens across the country die in fires. Many of these fire deaths could have been prevented. And this is serious business, and particularly, and this is why we're pleased that Veronica's here, seniors are especially vulnerable because many live alone and obviously have compromised ability to respond quickly. So this is very, very important. And here to speak about both of these issues, initially about these prevention and precaution tips, Chief Thompson, and then specifically the impact on our senior citizens, Veronica Pace. So first, let's hear from our Chief of Fire and EMS, Chief Adrian Thompson. Chief?
I want to say good morning to everybody here this morning. I want to thank the Mayor and Ms. Veronica Pace for coming in to raise awareness of fire safety in your homes. The first week of October is normally designated Fire Prevention Week across the whole country. The theme this year was safe use of candles, go out, blow out. If you remember, this past September we had an infant fatality in Columbia Heights due to a candle that was unattended. We must emphasize that candles are dangerous when used inappropriately or left unattended, especially around children and seniors. A lot of times they're not aware of how dangerous that they are, so they think they're toys that have a tendency to play with them. or put them too close to combustibles like curtains and drapes or next to bedding material. This past fiscal year, we've had 16 deaths in the city due to fires. Over a third of those are senior citizens. Once again, senior citizens are most vulnerable, as are small children, to fire issues and fire safety incidents. But we want to make sure the seniors are kept safe by offering our services to do home safety surveys of their homes. We'll check the smoke alarms out, make sure they work. We'll install batteries in them for them if they need be. Just contact us on 727-1614 to arrange that service for your senior citizens or seniors if you have no live by themselves. We're always available to help anytime possible. Thank you. Thank you again, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Pace, again. Thank you.
To speak up a little bit, now we want to hear from Veronica Pace to talk about the impact of all this on our senior citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Wait a second, till the card.
Every life is a life worth saving, and as you heard the chief indicate, that seniors are especially vulnerable. I just want to underscore what the mayor has said, because many of our older people do have compromising conditions. Many of our older people still smoke. Many of our older people like to burn candles. And we want to especially urge all older people, and you who know older people, to, when you give gifts, for example, if you give a aromatic candle, to make sure that you also give a heavy leaded glass vase or some container that will protect that candle, never burn an open candle. We want to encourage seniors to call 727-1614 and to request an inspection that the fire department will implement, so that we can make sure that your home is fireproof safe. Always, the Office on Aging and the chief are constantly working to get out the word, and this is where you can help. You play a very important part in communicating to our citizenry, and I'm going to call on people like Janetta, like Tom, like all of you, to help us in actually communicating to our citizens and to your constituency as well in readership, to do all that we can to protect our older people, to protect people with disabilities, to know who and where they are, but more importantly, to encourage practices that speak to fire prevention, that speak to safety in the home. And as always, people can always call certainly the Office on Aging at 724-5626. We're constantly doing outreach. We're constantly putting information in our, through the Senior Beacon, which has a 200,000 circulation, but it still is not enough, because if it was, we wouldn't lose one older person to fire. Thank you.
Okay, let's have some questions on fire prevention and safety.
Mayor?
Yes.
It was a little noisy when the chief was talking. Again, the inspections that are available, are they just for seniors? Is it for residences? Can you
Residents of the city in general, in particular, yes, just call us for home safety survey inspection of your home.
Does not come to the seniors?
Is anyone who requested? Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And Chief, how many seniors did you say had died in fires?
We lost 6 seniors this past fiscal year due to fires.
16?
16 total, 6 of those were seniors.
16 total,
And 6 of those were seniors, yes, ma'am.
past fiscal year.
Yes, sir.
And Chief, how many fire alarms are given out, and where do they come from? Are they donated, or do you have to buy them, or what's?
Smoke alarms that we have now available are being donated by Pepco and other organizations throughout the city who give them to us to give to the residents of the city. Some from the Insurance Association of Washington, D.C. assist us also.
Do the batteries come with it?
Yes, sir. They're ready to go. We install them, put batteries in them. Yes, sir.
I didn't hear you say how many.
Ma'am,
How many?
that we have installed so far,
How many are you giving out? How many are you giving out? Are you
How many are available?
we have about 5,000. We probably given out a third of those already to residents in the city.
And they're at fire stations?
Actually, I called Fire Prevention Division and arranged for the setup of bringing out to your home and installation purposes.
You'll actually install them?
We can recommend places to put them for you. And we can install them for senior citizens. We do that for them too. Yes, sir.
What's the number they call for that? Is that the same number?
727-1614. Yes, sir. Same number.
Anybody else? Okay, let's give our chief and Veronica a big hand. Thank you all. Okay. Every life saved is worth saving, certainly. So now we want to ask our Chief Medical Officer and Director of our Department of Public Health, Dr. Payne, to come forward. And as the cold weather is setting in here, our Director of Department of Health, Greg Payne, is here to give us an update on how people can protect themselves against the flu this year. And we've already received 10,560 doses of the vaccine. And this current supply is targeted to uninsured and underinsured people in high-risk groups. And this would include young people, seniors, people with chronic conditions such as asthma or diabetes, other high-risk segments of population. And we're on schedule with our vaccines for children. We've ordered about 24,900 doses and have distributed about 10,000 of the doses already received. And there have been some recent developments around flu vaccine in general, particularly as it's related to this whole bird flu, Asian avian flu, and ability to transmit quickly between human beings. And so to answer our own situation and questions you may have about the district's preparedness in general, we have our Chief Medical Officer. Doctor?
Well, good morning. Thank you, Mayor Williams. Appreciate Chief Thompson and the firefighters hosting us here today. These are the guys that not only prevent fires, but they save our lives in health emergencies, and I wanted to commend you and thank you for being here. We're talking today about the flu vaccine. I wanted to echo what the mayor said. I think we're in pretty good shape. You know, we've gotten in about half our order. We're expecting the rest by early to mid-November, and the CDC is telling us that despite what you heard about Chiron maybe not being able to produce all their doses, they've upped doses by other manufacturers, so they expect to have the full complement of doses nationwide, so hopefully we won't have any shortages. We ordered all our vaccine from the other manufacturer this year, so I think we'll be in good shape, and as the mayor said, we've distributed about half of what we've gotten in, and we're doing the same thing we did last year, working in partnership with our community organizations, the medical society, the hospitals, our nursing homes, to get the vaccine out that way so it's distributed to our citizens. As you recall, last year during the tough shortage, we were among one of the first jurisdictions to impose an emergency rule to ensure all the vaccine went to our priority groups. Thanks to the efforts of Congresswoman Norton and others, the district ended up getting 11,000 doses of vaccine donated to us, which we distributed throughout the city. This year, we're starting an aggressive flu education campaign which will include posters in English and Spanish throughout the city, basically urging individuals in the high-risk groups, that is the very young, those over 65, those with chronic medical conditions, healthcare workers, nursing home residents, and the like, to get their flu shots first. And we're emphasizing them in October, and then everybody else probably in late October and into November can come in for a flu shot. But we're emphasizing those high-risk groups first. And also we're emphasizing through our posters and other means just the common things that help prevent the flu. Just try to avoid getting sick, cover your mouth if you're sneezing, stay home. If you're sick, wash your hands and the like. Kind of those basics can make a huge difference. And lastly, let me mention a brief note about avian flu, which we're following in the media. I think we're certainly concerned and watching it, but I don't think there's reason for panic or anything at this point. I mean, this is in domestic fowl in Asia. There's no transmission between humans at this point. That's what they're watching out for. There have been about 100 human cases, but those have been direct from the infected birds, and that's highly unusual. No fowl are infected in the United States, and we're taking, or in the any Western countries, and we're taking precautions in that industry to avoid that. We have a pandemic flu plan, though, just in case, and we're following and working with Health and Human Services and the CDC in terms of guidelines and latest updates. So I think we're well prepared should this evolve. But at this point, we're concerned and watching, but there's no need to panic or be unduly concerned. Let me just conclude there and see if there's any questions.
Dr. Payne? What are you doing to prepare for it, even though it's not likely avian flu? What would you do if you had an outbreak? What would we see the government do?
Well, you know, there's a lot of similarities with regular flu. The same precautions would apply, and that would be actually key to stemming the epidemic, is just following basic precautions about avoiding getting sick, and if you are sick, avoiding spreading to others. There would be lots of discussion. Again, this is hypothetical, depending on what happened, but should we get to that point, I think it would be important to decide, gee, can people work from home? Do we minimize unnecessary travel in crowded situations like planes or in subways? There has to be a lot of discussion in the business community how we would basically shelter in place to avoid spreading this where we can. As you know, besides the common precautions that we need to take, there's active efforts underway to develop a vaccine. You saw the efforts by Health and Human Services there. And then in terms of antivirals, there's been a lot of talk about that, and we are having those same discussions here. We have some Tamiflu in the district that the hospitals have purchased through their grants. So we have a small cache, and we're talking with the deputy mayors and others about possibly getting more. And certainly we're in contact with CDC and HHS and Strategic National Stockpile, both in terms of guidance that's going to come out depending on how this thing evolves, if it even comes up, and in terms of any supplies that we might need. Believe me, we'll take nothing to chance. We're not going to be waiting around here. You've seen the national response to disaster. We need to be prepared here, and we will be prepared.
Okay. Other questions? Make yourself at home. Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Okay. Yeah, Robert has a question for you. The question was, say that louder so everybody can hear you.
Would they use like the antivirals, have you looked all that far about it?
No, I think that type of thing, those type of guides will come out later when we see what's developing here. But you'd presume, though, that frontline workers, just like we have frontline healthcare workers like these folks, for regular flu shots, we're recommending they get those, and we put them in the high-risk group early on for regular flu. I'm sure the same would apply here. And we would be, should we get to that point, invoking the appropriate district response and disaster plans, which would set a whole constellation of things so we'd be ready.
How many flu shots has, how many it's ordered total, and how many it's actually given to individuals?
Yeah, and this is by the health department. And remember, the private sector has most of the doses, so there have been many more than I'm going to mention that have been bought directly by drugstores, docs, hospitals, and the like. So there's probably 4 to 5 times what I'm saying is probably out there in the district. We've gotten ordered 21,000 doses. This is the adult, and we ordered none from Chiron. That manufacturer had trouble last year. We've got about half in and distributed, as the mayor mentioned. On the children's side, through the VFC program, Vaccine for Children, around 25,000 we've ordered, got about 10 or 11 in, and that's been distributed as well. So we expect it all in and distributed by hopefully early to mid-November. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, now we're ready. I have a very busy schedule, but I can take a couple questions from you.
It's not restricted. Are you going to college today? They're doing more discussion about some evacuation plans for the region. Are you familiar with the college schedule?
I've got a couple of important things we've got to do here, but I am going to be following that closely, and we'll be working closely with the chair on that.
Mr. Mayor, what about the DUI legislation that the council passed on an emergency basis yesterday? What is your opposition to this act?
Well, if you start from the beginning, you see, it wasn't like some people were just sitting around and they just decided, hey, you know what, let's have an extremely low, very low standard threshold for intoxication. No, there were people who were calling for this because they were concerned about drunk driving in the district. So there are people actively out there calling for tough enforcement and sanctions DUI. So we put that in place. Now, we've got an issue of, I think, execution enforcement, standard setting, and all that reasonableness. And I think the council has gone overboard in the direction of people who are saying, well, maybe abuses here, you may be hurting the restaurant business, so on and so forth. We pass emergency legislation. A couple things. Do I think that there are some issues that have to be looked at here? Yes, I do. both from the administrative enforcement end, certainly from the legislative end in terms of the overall standard, all balancing the need for tough enforcement with the need to support our tourism, hospitality. Nobody supported tourism and hospitality better, more than I have. But having said that, do I think the way we do this is on an emergency basis and just lurch around like we're drunk, based on the last person yelled at us? I don't think so. I think we should do this in a much more thoughtful, deliberate way. I don't think the 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it would be, for the council to go through a normal process of hearings, review, thoughtful analysis of this it would be that harmful. That's all I'm saying. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this bill, but my real issue is above and beyond the work product involved, which I think was hastily written, and I think council members and staff would agree with that. It's beyond that. It's just that I think council ought to be taking a much more thoughtful approach on this. Well, I'm pleased to hear that Councilman Mendelson, who is chair of the committee with jurisdiction over police, is going to be looking at this with an angle that I think is the important angle, and that is how are our law enforcement officers out there on the street day-to-day basis based on the guidance they're getting, the directives they're getting, making the right judgments.
There's been some suggestion, Mr. Mayor, that the cowboy cop who enforced this rule got all the attention in the post, and also there's suggestions that the person who was arrested that night, in addition to having low alcohol, was disrespectful and dismissing of the whole situation. Do you have any understanding that that was a unique event that should not characterize what the police are doing in town?
I mean, there is some uniqueness to this event based on the reports I've gotten from MPD and from Ed Riskin, but I'm willing to concede that there is a larger issue here. I'm the first to concede it. Ed will concede that. Robert will concede that. But what we're saying is there is a right way to approach this, and there's another way, and this is the other way. I'm just looking at our options, and what I like to do, above and beyond whether we're going to veto it or not, is really work with the council on the longer-term legislation, and obviously we're going to be working with our people on what adjustments we need to be making on the enforcement end.
Said there needs to be better police training, specifically of what to do in the circumstances.
I wouldn't agree with. I don't know if I would agree in the broad categories to the extent that there's an implicit criticism of training generally in the police department. Of course, I wouldn't agree with that. But is more attention needed to this particular transaction with our citizens and visitors? Yes, I would agree with that. Okay, other questions? Yeah, sir. Welcome.
I wanted to ask, are you concerned about meeting the deadline, the legislative deadline to have the technical correction amendments in place in time for selling the baseball stadium bonds on or about December 15th, as Nat Gandy would like to do?
We've been in contact, actually, on an ongoing basis with each of the individuals involved, me personally, with Nat Gandhi, with Mark Toohey, with Steve Goldsmith, all the people who have something to say about this. But we have actually now begun regular meetings with me and with Robert, with the entire team, make sure we're all on message, all focused on keeping this project plan in place. And I'm confident that we are going to get the job done. I'm pleased to see the support of Council Chair Kropp for the financing package. That, on her urging, and I readily conceded this, is a better package. We've seen a better package now over the last 5 or 6 months because Council Chair Kropp's leadership on this. And more broadly, I think what you're going to be seeing is, and we want to really push this, is in another 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to see unveiled proposals for the master planning around the stadium. And I think then you will see real substantiation, an objective foundation for everything we've been saying in terms of the economic productivity, viability of this site. And when you really look at what this site is producing versus how much more it's costing than RFK, which is not $200 million, I think it's closer to $100 million. RFK is not a slam dunk. All of you were around here at a time when I was just getting here. They were talking about putting a new football stadium over on that RFK complex. That's a very difficult site. It's not a slam dunk site. So when you consider the sunk costs already put into this site, all the time and effort and money, you consider the costs that are actually involved beyond what we've been talking about in putting a possible stadium there, and then you look at the value that you get from that South Capitol site, I think you will find, and I'm going to be preaching this to citizens and civic leaders and business people all over the city, there's no longer any comparison in my mind. This is, in terms of tax base to the city, in terms of increment for community benefit, this is a hugely powerful site, and we need to keep this site.
Mr. Mayor, it sounds like you're concerned that council opponents might throw a wrench into this process when they get the technical amendment.
I've always been concerned and continue to be. Yes, I've always been concerned. And I think we need to get from the inside baseball game, who shot John and who said what and who horse traded what, which is all part of the process, we all understand, get to the larger issue of, is this net benefit to the city? Absolutely. And will this not only not take away from, for example, school modernization, but could be a huge engine for funds for school modernization? Absolutely. And we want to get that message out there because I think it can be.
Mr. Mayor, to follow up on that, do you see your plan as being in jeopardy even with the support of Brock at this point?
It's always been it's always been tenuous. I'm the first to say that. And so we're always on alert. We're on alert status.
Would it help you if Major League Baseball picked an owner sooner rather than later?
Yeah, it would.
Are you expressing that?
Yes, we are, because I think it would, to have a face there, and one of the things we've been pleased is that we're seeing more and more of the petitioners now before baseball making an effort to go out there and get local support. Now, I happen not to be a supporter, for example, of Mr. Simoleon, because I have a concern that he isn't in the city, and I have a concern that his participation in and of itself is diluted by corporate investment. In other words, it's not his investment out of town is not even his personally, it's more corporate and organizational. Well, the last thing I want is some far distant corporation having a major stake and control and direction over the baseball franchise here. That's my issue. But having said that, I'm very pleased with one thing, and that is the way he has gone around this city and he has gotten a galaxy of wide-ranging, diverse support in the city, of leaders in the city, out there in the neighborhoods, all different orientations, backgrounds, in terms of religion, in terms of orientation, everything else. I am impressed with that, and so I think our message is resounding. We just need to get baseball to make a decision for an owner, should be local direction and control to help us push this case for the citizens. And I would think a local owner help us make some kind of contribution to this too.
We're not in jeopardy of losing the baseball franchise, the Nationals, right? Because of this renewed debate we're not in jeopardy of losing the team.
Well, I mean, I just think, I won't make any sweeping statements. I'll just say that this is a very tenuous thing, and, you know, we're very, very vigilant about it, which is why we're personally engaged in it.
Mr. Mayor, one last baseball question. Is your view that the lease of Major League Baseball for the new stadium, does that have to go to the council for approval, or does it not?
I'm waiting for council to get back to me with an opinion, and then based on that, I can let you know. I'm waiting to get an official opinion from council, from Attorney General, from the Attorney General, yeah. I mean, every big bank, World Bank like that, has all kinds of history. I mean, you know, we certainly want to be cooperative and responsive to events in general. I'm not sure about these concerns about Deutsche Bank in particular. I mean, the fact is, the council called for this kind of process to look for improving and refining this financial package. We did a worldwide competition. This is whom we come up with in response to the council. You know, I mean, this is kind of how I feel like with this hospital thing. Everybody says, close the hospital. Everybody says, you idiot, you close the hospital, what are you doing? So now we're talking about building a hospital. Now everybody says, you idiot, you're building a hospital. So, I mean, you know, I just got my little mule here. I'm trying to plow my field based on the instructions I'm given. Yeah.
Speaking of the hospital, Mr. Bob was apparently grilled in Ward 6 on that topic last night. When will you be submitting that to the council?
I got to talk to Robert. I did ask Elfrida to get Channel 16 to tape the debate because I would like to see the debate widely disseminated out here to the citizens on Channel 16 because it is an important discussion. But we happen to believe, and I think I'm sure Robert ably articulated this as he always does, but you know, our belief is that where Howard is making the proper investment and where we have the maldistribution of beds that we do in the city and where we can also work with Greater Southeast to keep it supported, work with Prince George's County and Maryland to see that we have the right kind of involvement and interaction with them because, you know, our indigent population really doesn't know any political boundary. Where all those things in place, I think this can be a very powerful initiative that will not be a net drain on the city's coffers and will be a net plus for our health care in the city. To me, the important things are an entity like Howard University is operating it, and again, we want to work cooperatively in terms of a regulatory regime with Maryland, Prince George's County to cover all of our indigent population because that's part of your market that has to be considered here. Those are important considerations in my mind. Yeah. There's always been a ceiling in our mind. We don't want to spend money on operation. That's the ceiling. We don't want to spend any. Yeah. Which goes to the need. I mean, if there's a need, then I think private sector will come in and say, we want to do this. If there isn't a need, then the private sector won't. I mean, that's your best indication, unless I'm missing something. Best indication of need I think there is. Yeah, go ahead. Nobody else has one. Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned Bob. What's the status of his campaign for mayor, in your opinion?
As recently... No, as recently as yesterday, Robert assured me that his #1 commitment is to seeing that, you know, the goals we've set for the next 15 months, you know, are accomplished, and that, you know, when we go out the door, this city is in much better shape than when we found it. And I trust Bob at his word.
What's his #2 commitment?
You know, I mean, Robert has done, I think, a great job here in the city, remarkable job here in the city. The Hotspots Initiative, for example, with this initiative on healthcare, with this initiative, for example, with the new communities, to go in there into what we're now calling Northwest One, and to get the buy-in and consensus of folks there shows, I think, masterful leadership. And I'm very, very proud of him. I mean, we need to be sending him into the Balkans or the Near East. I mean, that's a remarkable achievement. I just believe, and Robert knows I believe this, if he's actively going to get in play, then he needs to do this on his own time. But if he's simply doing his job in the fashion he's doing it, which is a great job, and citizens are out there talking, I don't think he should quit his job simply because citizens are out there talking. So there is a fine line there. When I was CFO, obviously, you know, when I felt that I was crossing that line, then I left my job. And I know that Robert will respect that line.
And the city administrator is here. Can we get him to address that?
Yeah, he's the man. Come on up.
Bob, have you been approached about running for mayor?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's interesting to read all of this stuff in the newspaper. You know, someone approached me and said, well, I hear you've been making phone calls to people over in Ward 4. I haven't made any phone calls to anybody. You know, my goal is, as I stated before, we have a large agenda. I came here, I tied my future success to that of Mayor Anthony Williams. And I'm here to help close out this administration in a very strong fashion. Now, if someone approaches me and makes me an offer that I can't refuse, you know, I've got to look out for my future also. But right now, we have a big agenda. We have a lot of things on the table, and we're dogged about ensuring that the progress that's been made under this mayor, under this administration, continues. And we're not going to let any of our associates get in the way of moving that agenda forward.
Well, you know, we're going to pick up on that. If you made an offer you can't refuse. I mean, they call upon we served on, we be interested?
Are you,
Well, you know, maybe your station say, okay, we need somebody to be the president and general manager. I mean, I have to take a look at an offer like that.
Would you work for Mayor Fenty? He said he'd want to keep you.
You know what? I came here, I left Oakland, California. I came across country, which has not been the easiest move in the world from a personal standpoint, to work for Mayor Anthony A. Williams. And I tie my success to his success, complete and total loyalty to the programs that he's put in place and where we're going in the direction of the District of Columbia, and then to drive the rest of our associates to follow in that regard.
are you considering running for mayor at this time?
No.
Can you definitively say that you won't run for mayor?
Could you definitively say that if offered the position of city administrator, you would not accept it?
Yeah, I can say that.
Thanks.
That was very deftly handled by the city administrator. It's exactly what a candidate for mayor should do.
I think, Robert, the reason why, I think, I've always said this, I think that when I hired Robert, I believed that, one horse is going to run faster with a faster horse next to him or her. You always want to hire people who are smarter than you. I've always tried to do this. If you look at my cabinet and you look at someone like Robert Bobb, it speaks to that. I knew Robert was a first-rate administrator, and that's why I hired him, and I think it was a great choice. Yeah.
Can you comment on the groundbreaking today at 145?
All I can say is thank the Lord. You mean about Minnesota Benning Road?
Yes.
Thank the Lord. Because I've been pushing the government centers projects, and when, good Lord Almighty, I know, and when the private sector comes in and says, the process needs to be sped up, I says, no one believes this more than I do. These government centers projects are so important to me. I think they're an important legacy of our administration. I give credit to now Councilman Berry because I actually looked at the Reeves Center. I think the Reeves Center was a great economic engine for 14th Street. That's what I'm trying to do in Anacostia Gateway. That's what we're trying to do at the Anacostia office complex for WMATA and AWC, conceptually at this point. That's what we're trying to do in Minnesota and Benning Road. Where you bring in a major government investment, it can spawn the private sector investment.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any comment on Jack Evans and the investigation by the Office of Campaign Finance?
Just a couple of things. I think that Jack has been, we've had our disagreements, but I think Jack has been an able councilman, great policy person. I think he's one of the best politicians on the council. And as far as I know, on the trip, he was there in his capacity, did a great job representing our city and representing the council. And Marcia Rawls was there and did an able job as a businesswoman who happens to be an arts activist, businesswoman in the city. Beyond that, there's a study going on. Let's look at the results of the study. But I fully support Jack and I'm behind him fully.
Well, what about the specific allegation?
I don't want to comment on specific things until we know more. That's why we have an official review.
Mayor, on that subject, your wife she was paid for by your fund. What is the fund that you have?
That's Washington First, and Washington First was set up officially 501c4, following all applicable rules. We've had, Dorothy isn't here. We have all the regular disclosure of the 501c4. That's what she was paid for under Washington First. Okay, yes, sir, Mr. Seagraves. Huh?
If you want to talk about specifics, can you talk about the Office of Campaign Finance? How would you rate their job and how they regulate these PACs and campaign? And are you, I know you've paid fines before.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Is there still an open investigation, either Board of Elections or Campaign Finance, with regard to any of your campaigns or anything?
I know that our Attorney General has opened up an investigation of that whole rat's nest of the petitions, and I support him doing that. The U.S. Attorney declined to move forward further on it. My view, and I really, and I'm not saying this because I'm now not running, I'm trying to be, magnanimous, but I've always believed that, you just got to let the cards fall, the chips fall where they're going to fall. And I don't really begrudge Dorothy, I don't begrudge y'all, and I certainly don't begrudge Office of Campaign Finance. I think by and large they've done a good and able job. I think they were, they're fine when the election was a little excessive. I've always said that, but, what are you going to do?
Mayor Williams, yesterday, the Baltimore Tunnel closed down. It turns out that the mayor of Baltimore wasn't notified about that. Any comments on how that worked out from a mayor's point of view?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, because there you have the governor and the mayor in different, point positions, as we all know in a lot of ways. And I would hope that that didn't interfere with the proper, and I would trust that that hasn't interfered with the right kind of communication. That's, at least politics didn't get involved, but to the point that nonetheless there was a lack of communication, that is disturbing to me, because it's very, very important that every level of government be involved in things like this, because certainly the closure of a tunnel would have major impact on Baltimore's commerce, the same way we know that our closures have major impact on our city, the citizens in our city. And I called Martin yesterday to talk to him about it, and we're going to be talking about it today, so I can let you know more. I have not talked to the governor yet, so yes.
Mr. Mayor, now that you've announced that you're not running again, are your supporters...
Does anyone care?
No, are your supporters...
I got to tell you one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, take this. This is helpful hints from Tony Williams. If you've announced that you're not running for a major office like mayor of the District of Columbia, do not, within 2 days, even if you wish your council chair the happiest birthday in the world, and even if you think fondly of her, don't go to her party, because it's a real, you feel like Batman had your car repossessed. I mean, you really feel like all your power has been completely drawn. That was the most surreal, weird feeling I had in there. So I am going through some kind of withdrawal.
Are you rethinking the decision you changed?
No, I made a decision. I stand by my decision. I'm just sharing with you. It's a difficult decision.
So you feel less relevant?
And there's no way you can't feel less relevant, I mean, in a political way, because your support is being shifted and reallocated, and that's, I'm just saying, I'm just sharing with you personally, that's a wrenching thing to see that. You say, oh my God, they got somebody else's button. And then you say to yourself, idiot, you're not running. Of course they have someone else's button,
So my question is, now that you're not running, are people coming to you and asking for your advice about who to support, and what are you telling them?
I'm telling them that they should basically allow all the candidates to make their own appeals, and at a later point I'll have my own comment, and it'll have more or less effect. We'll see. I mean, I think we can you all know this from covering elections here, some of you for years now. I mean, we can overplay these endorsements. We've already seen that. I mean, at the height of my popularity and power, I waved my magic wand and royal scepter over Charlene, and that didn't do any good. So.
Marion Barry, a couple weeks ago,
And he waved his royal scepter over people too, and historically didn't do any good. So
he's the guy who had some experience in this, but he says he thinks it was a mistake to announce that you weren't going to run, and he called you a quote lame duck. 2 lanes. I mean.
Well, I think I've done a lot of things that Marion has thought were a mistake, and I think the city is materially better off. So what can I say? Okay, thanks a lot.
So what was the news here today?
Huh?
So what was the news here today? Fire
prevention. Yes.